Hey y'all, I'm Carrie,
Hey y'all, I'm Mandy.
and this is Monstrous. This episode contains topics and language that may not be suitable for all listeners, and topics that may be triggering for some. Listener discretion is advised. Okay. Episode 2 of today.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yep, that we recorded today.
And this is a long one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have no idea exactly how long because I did not time it. So,
Oh,
but it is going to be longer than normal.
right.
It definitely could be 2 parts, but like I said,
You don't want to do 2 parts.
yeah, I feel like it would just mess with the flow of it. And there's a lot, so I feel like if we split it, a lot would be forgotten.
Right.
So, just do one episode, a little bit longer.
Got it?
Yep. All right. Big topic today. I'm excited about this one.
Are you?
Yeah. Okay, so growing up in this area, I learned about today's case pretty young. But honestly, I didn't think to cover it until my papa had mentioned it and was like, "Why have you thought about covering this on the podcast?" I didn't even think about it.
Oh, nice.
But if it's perfect.
Right.
So, I feel like now, after last month, all of that is a good time to do it.
Okay.
It's a little bit of everything. So, everyone knows that there's a lot of players in this one, okay? I've done my best to keep them all straight. I know you don't like cutting me off in the middle of talking, but if I need to clarify something, do it. Because
Okay.
there's a lot happening in this one.
All right.
It might get confusing.
Okay.
Okay. So with all that being said, are you ready to talk about the biggest mystery in the history of North Carolina?
Yes.
So we're going to jump into our Wayback Machine that I got just right over
Time
here.
machine?
Yep. You'll jump right in it. We're going to go back to 1587.
Oh, shit.
Okay. Boop. Here we are, 1587. And during this year, around 115 people, men, women, and children, were all left on Roanoke Island. And when help returned 3 years later, the entire colony of at least 115 people had disappeared, with only one clue left behind. It was a cryptic word carved into a tree. This is the Lost Colony of Roanoke and the mystery of Roanoke Island.
Everybody just disappeared.
Yep. There's a lot of theories about what happened, all of that, and we'll get into all of it, but they just vanished.
That's insane.
Yeah, crazy. Yep. Okay. This mystery has baffled researchers, archaeologists, explorers, and really anyone that knows this story for centuries. This story is so mysterious that PhD historian and author Adrian Masters calls it the Area 51 of colonial history.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So in order to understand how this mysterious disappearance could have happened to begin with, we got to have some background on the time period, okay? So there's a lot of players, like I said, a lot of growing tensions, a lot of relationships between explorers and the native people of North America. So we're going to first get into the history and the mystery. Then we're going to go into some paranormal stuff.
Nice.
So it's got a little bit of everything.
Good.
So like I said before, there's a lot of names of Native American tribes. I'm going to do my best to pronounce them. Probably won't, so I'm going to apologize now. Do my best. So during this time, it's the reign of Queen Elizabeth over England and Ireland, which, for those that don't know, Queen Elizabeth was the daughter of Anne Boleyn of the Boleyn sisters.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Little fun fact in there, which I want to do Anne Boleyn.
On one of our podcasts?
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know any.
You don't know the Boleyn sisters?
I don't think so.
Oh, I love them. There's a movie about them. It's obviously mostly bullshit, but I love the Boleyn sisters.
Now I'm going to have to Google it when we get done.
It's such a fucked up story, dude.
Do not get me into that when I'm trying to have to decipher through this one.
I'm not, because I want to cover it.
Okay.
And it's one of those that, like, it's so good. It's so fucked up, but I want to cover it. Okay, so Queen Elizabeth was the daughter of Anne Boleyn. Right. Okay. Now, Queen Elizabeth was dealing with a lot at this time. She had to wait through all the political drama because she's a queen without a king,
Right.
right? Um, so she's trying to avoid a war. She's trying not to clash with other nations. She also has her go at several husbands, extramarital relations, and she also makes her way through relatives to try to produce an heir.
The fuck?
Yep. She does eventually get pregnant, and if I remember correctly, it was one of her cousins that got her pregnant.
Of course.
Yeah. So, she's also had a hand in sending her cousin, Mary Queen of Scots, to prison. Do you know who Mary Queen of Scots is?
Mm-mm.
She's on my list to cover as well.
Okay, nice.
Yep. So Queen Elizabeth is busy. She's got her hands in a little bit of everything. She's causing some drama. She's trying to avoid some drama. She's all over the damn place. All right. She don't know which way is up and which way is down at this fucking point. Like, so through all of this, she has a ton of pressure on her, especially being a queen
Right.
with no king. She's ruling the land when typically during this time it was the king.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so at the time, there's a bunch of nations going out and exploring. They're trying to discover new land, trying to colonize it, all of that. Queen Elizabeth decides that it's time that England does the same thing. So Queen Elizabeth has now become a colonizer. Okay. To get this done, she hires a man named Sir Walter Raleigh to pick up where his late brother had left off on the explorations. He was tasked with creating the first English colony in North America. And he didn't really have any direction on where to go. Queen Elizabeth had basically told him, just
Do it.
go do whatever. All you need to do is find gold, bring it back, and give me 1/5 of it. That's it. But there was a problem. Sir Walter Raleigh wasn't actually allowed to leave England.
No shit.
So to do this, he hired a bunch of different other people. He planned the route, he planned the stops, all of that, but he hired people to go do it for him. Right. So in 1584, Sir Walter Raleigh sends Philip Amatus and Arthur Barlow to America. The two men arrived to the Roanoke area, which today we know the Roanoke Island area is in Dare County, North Carolina. But at the time, these Englishmen believed that the area was unsettled. But in fact, it was not, because many native people lived in this area, which is kind of how every American colony starts, to be honest. The English just kind of find a plot of land and are just like,
Boop, boop. It's mine.
this is mine. We own it. We found it first. Yeah. Because, you know, that's how we roll around here. So, which as we know from history, that's not the case. We just kind of come in, steal everything. The native people of these lands suffered greatly from every one of these conquests. Not only were their resources and lands taken from, but these conquests also brought diseases that weren't in North America before they arrived, like syphilis, measles, smallpox. All of that was not here until colonizers brought it with them.
Right.
These groups actually still suffer today from these diseases. All you really have to do is take a look at how many Indigenous women and girls are missing or have been murdered, and how most people don't even blink an eye at it. That's all you have to look at to confirm that Native people still suffer because of all of that today. It's a whole nother topic, though. So, on top of all of that, over the last 4 centuries, many of these groups that I'm going to tell you about today have died off. They no longer exist. Yeah. So, once Philip and Arthur arrive to this new land, they meet the Secatoan people, who were the native people that controlled this area at the time. They establish good relationships, and then they take off for England. They bring 2 of these native people with them on their journey back. They bring the Winchelsea, who is of the Secatoan tribe, and then Montio, I think it's Montio, who is of the Croatoan tribe. And he was actually the son of the chieftain of the Croatoan island. So he's basically a prince.
Right.
So once they arrive in England, the group of men, which consisted of the explorers, the Englishmen, colonists, the colonizers, and these 2 tribe representatives, they all meet with Queen Elizabeth and Raleigh. This is the guy that's running, the whole thing, and they tell him this area is great. It's bountiful land, perfect. We should send a full colony of people over there, right? Even though we don't have shit for them to live in, just send them over here. So now Raleigh sends this guy named Ralph Lane to Roanoke Island with a few other people and the tribe's representatives. They decide to head for this island specifically because it had the best access to the ocean and also helped them avoid Spanish patrols. Because Spanish is out here doing the same shit, right?
Right.
So there's also a lot of pirating going on during this time. So with all the pirates and the colonists going from one country to another, if the Spanish saw them, they would no doubt have been attacked. They didn't want that. So this spot gave them great visibility so they could see if they were coming. It kept them hidden and also gave them a fast getaway if they were spotted. Makes sense. So once they arrived, they set up shop and they built the Roanoke Fort. From here, the colony quickly built several buildings, which included a church, a jail, and several others. But there was a problem. Once they arrived on the island, Ralph Lane was not a nice guy. His relationship with the native people was shit, and they were running out of supplies fast. Like I said before, there are many tribes in this story. I'm going to say them as correctly as I can. I apologize if I say them. So to name a few of these, we have the Croatoan, the Secatoan, the Aquascogog, and Ralph did not get along with any of them. In fact, for the most part, he just murders them.
Holy shit.
Yeah, he just kills them. So an example of his cruelty to these people is that after someone had misplaced a silver cup, Ralph's people had blamed the Aquascogog people, and he demanded that they give up the stolen cup. But the native tribe was like, we don't have your cup. We never had your cup. Everyone knows what he's talking about. He didn't believe him. So his crew burned the entire village down, along with its crops, forcing the native people to flee.
The fuck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so not a good guy.
Yeah.
By any means. So with Ralph Lane having this reputation, the native people began to venture further out into the island as more ships of coloners begin to arrive. So his cruelty really bites him in the ass in the end because at this point they're really dependent on the native people for their help to gather food, learn how to live in this area, all of that. So with that being known, the colonizers begin to work to restore their relationship with these native people. With some persuading Winchisi, Manteo, the Sakatoan, and some of the neighboring villages to provide food for the colonizers to get them through the coming winter. So they had a few friends.
Right.
Right. But it was possible that they didn't hand this food over willingly, though.
Of course not.
Lane had a habit of kidnapping native people and then holding them for ransom in exchange for food.
What a dick.
Yeah. So now the colony had began to grow corn. They brought both food and supplies with them on their ship, but obviously they're running out rather quickly because the life here versus there in England was totally different and not what they expected. So eventually the native people are just kind of become sick of their shit. And they're like, no. They keep killing us. They're kidnapping us. They're stealing from us. We're done. No more. You're on your own. So they kind of retreat. As the Englishmen go down to the riverbanks to get water, things like that, the native would just take off running. So that way they could get away without being hunted down. And then eventually the Englishmen are just left on their own. So now without the help of the native people, the colonists would without a doubt die. Like,
they're done.
Yeah, you don't know what the fuck you're doing out here. You're dead. So Lane once again tries to make peace with the natives, and he gets lucky. Lane gets an opportunity to make that peace because there's a power shift among the native tribes. The Secatoan leader, Gran Canamio, was a powerful advocate for the colony despite his people's reluctance to help them. And at this time, he had passed away. Following this, Pimasapan becomes the tribe's leader, and he was very suspicious of the colonizers, which, fair, my guy.
Right. Most definitely.
Yeah. So he's just straight outright suspicious. Like, he does not hide his suspicion at all. And he decides to test them. He wants to see how far he can push them. He wants to see if they can be truly trusted, and he wants to see how much he can do to get the upper hand on these men. Now, Phil Lane is a complete fucking idiot. Like, he has no idea what's happening with any of this. He thinks him and the tribe leader are like best buds. Like, they're talking, they're scheming together, they're trying to decide where to go next and how to colonize. And Lane tells the tribe leader that he plans to explore beyond the Secatoan territory. He wants to go further, explore more land, get more food, and possibly move the entire colony more inland. Now, Pimis Sapan is like, yeah, cool. Yeah, sounds great. But did you know that everyone is planning on attacking you?
He said that?
Yeah. He's like, yeah, I met with my allies, and Chief Minatonin said that there were like 3,000 warriors just gathering around to, attack you and your colony.
Fuck y'all up.
Yeah. Which Lane, of course, had no fucking idea.
Right?
He was shocked, like, no, what could have caused them to want to attack us?
My guy.
Like, what did we do? But instead of trying to fix the issue and figure out what was going on, instead he's like, let's just grab some soldiers and get ready to fight. Let's just gear up.
Great mentality.
Right. Yep. So he's like, we've got weapons. And our weapons can cause some major damage. So let's just go out to the battlefield. Just fight it out. Make the strongest team win.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they go out and they get there. To his surprise, there was a representative from each tribe. And they were all there peacefully. There were not thousands of warriors ready to fight. They believed that Lane had wanted to talk peacefully about their relationships and that their council had been requested to do so. Yeah. So the tribe representatives gathered, waiting for Lane to arrive to talk things out, but really they were just sitting ducks. So what the fuck happened? Right? Well, Pamisiapan wanted to make Lane look worse than he already did. And he wanted to make sure that he had the upper hand on this guy. So, like I said, he went to Lane saying that these tribes were going to attack him. Then he went to Minatonin, who was another tribe leader, and told him his and everyone else's council had been requested and asked him to gather everyone. So, everyone trusting Minatonin, and both Lane and Minatonin trusting Pamisiapan, they all came together. And as we can all guess, Lane is all hyped up. He's super aggressive. He does not tone it down to match everyone else. Like, this guy does not read the room at all. And he's ready to attack. And he did. He kidnapped Minatonin. Now, Minatonin is able to gain Lane's trust. He tells Lane about riches and waterways and all the different places, which saves his life, really. Because he knows all this stuff about the island, so why kill him?
Right.
So while Pamisiapan is still doing everything that he can to get Lane kicked out of everyone's good graces, which eventually his plan does work, no one trusts Lane or the colony, so none of them want to help them in any way. No more. They're like,
We're done.
You're done. So Lane now is like, nope, this shit ain't fun no more. I'm going to go home.
I'm done, my guy. You're on your own.
Yeah. So he tells his colony to break up into smaller, non-threatening groups and go to the Outer Banks and the mainland and beg for food. They then shoot Minatonin, cut off his head, and place it on a stake outside the colony. Then Lane leaves for England.
Well, that's an exit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So now we're going to get our Wayback Machine and jump ahead a few years to 1587. This is when John White leads an expedition to this area. Now, there isn't much known about John White except for him being a talented artist. He is actually the one that created early maps of America. And he was one of the Englishmen that took that first journey to Roanoke before Lane turned everything to shit. So he's kind of been a background player this whole time. So Raleigh decides to send John over to America with 100 other people, including John's pregnant daughter and her husband. All the men that took this trip were heads of their household, and each man that joined was promised 500 acres of land if they were the head of their household. That's a lot of land to promise that many people.
Right.
And it's an island.
Yeah.
So they were also promised gold, and all the things. But that wasn't true. Not true at all. There's a lot of mystery when it comes to Roanoke, and the written testimony is part of it. There's a lot of embellishments, and a lot of people just straight up lied to get access to ships and funds to get these quote unquote resources when really all they did was go pirate and pillage everything. So, what we know in history about Roanoke is really just by ear and written down. None of it is truly known to be without a doubt all facts. Okay. But historians are working to try to figure out what is true and what isn't. But that's a very long and difficult process. And I don't know if it'll ever happen. So, with all that being said, what I'm going to tell you is documented, but how much of it is completely true what exactly happened 438 years ago is hard to say. But there are some things that we do know is true because there are photos that show several of the things I'm going to tell you about, which I think everyone will be able to decipher what is true without a doubt and what is by word of mouth and nothing more. Some things it's very clear, some, not sure. So, moving on now. So, Raleigh sends Simon Fernandez as well because he's an expert navigator. And you're on a ship, middle of the ocean. Kind of need that. So, he's there to just assist John on the journey. But Simon was kind of an egotistic jerk because we always have one of those.
Right.
And John wasn't assertive at all. Like, he was the leader of this expedition, but he's really a doormat. Great leader you picked there, Raleigh. So, this is kind of how we ended up with the Lost Colony to begin with.
Great.
Yeah. So, Simon, like I said, is an expert navigator, but he didn't respect John in any way. So, he didn't listen to anything he said, which led him to screw up several times, leaving them with a lack of supplies and time to get to their destination. And eventually, they end up a week behind because of Simon. But they do eventually reach Roanoke Island. So they're only supposed to be here for a very short time because they're actually looking for English soldiers that were left behind. So they don't initially go out there looking for the island. They're trying to find English soldiers. So while they're checking it out, seeing how they're doing, all of that. So then after the entire crew, the whole 100 plus people on the boat were set to move onto the Chesapeake Bay. But when they get to Roanoke Island, John and the colony find abandoned homes. They find half-buried skeletons, which were that of English soldiers, which this discovery was pretty unsettling because this was a dark, barren island. It's very clear that they had been attacked and that the soldiers had not been buried properly. This meant two things: that the other soldiers they found one half-buried skeleton. I'm sorry, I misspoke. So the other soldiers had either buried him hastily because they were in a rush to get out of there and then just left, or someone else had buried the soldier. And only God knows where the other ones are. But they really had no idea which. So by the time they get there and they make this discovery, it's late. So they decide that with having found this half-buried soldier and no sign of the others who normally would have come to shore to meet them, seeing the ship, they were worried and concerned. So they decided, late, it's dark, we're just going to stay here on the beach and then venture to the forts the next day during daylight. Smart choice, people.
Right.
Don't go into the woods in the middle of the night, especially in an area that you know nothing about. Things are very mysterious at this point. They're freaked the fuck out, obviously. But why stay on the beach when you could go back to the ship?
That is true.
That's where I would go.
That's where I would stay.
I don't know what the fuck is all this island. Well, they couldn't really do that. Simon dipped the fuck out.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, he's just like, peace out, Girl Scout.
I'm done. Deuces.
No, thank you. Yeah, which it kind of seemed like that was his plan to begin with because this guy never even left the boat.
He never got off the boat?
No.
So he let everybody else get off the boat and he stayed on the whole time?
Yep, and then dipped out.
It's like, deuces, I'm taking it.
Yep.
Bye, you're on your own.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. He abandoned the entire colony on Roanoke Island with the skeleton of someone who came before them with no supplies. Yeah. Things are not off to a good start here.
Not at all.
Yeah. So there's 115 people that we know of stuck on this island, one of them being pregnant. There is one known dead person because, hi,
Right.
skeleton. Then there's one group already here that have mysteriously disappeared. Those other soldiers, no idea where they're at. John is like, there's no way an entire group of people will just disappear again. No way it could happen same place twice.
No.
Yeah. And through all of this, John is like aggressively journaling. Like, you know, John is pissed this is going on, but he doesn't say anything because he doesn't like conflict. So he's just like aggressively just,
Writing the shit out of everything.
yeah. Yep. Uh so his journals, once they find them and all of that, like it reveals all of this is going on. So that's why I said this could be true. Some of it may not be because this is from John. It could have been shit
Right.
saying out of anger. Either way, it makes a good story.
That's true.
Yeah. Uh and during the with it being the time that it was, a lot of the stuff that happens and that he says happens does kind of make sense
Hmm.
with the time. So it's just hard to decide. It's still a good story though. Anyway, so it's amazing to me that he's like, no, we want despair. This fuckhead just left us here. Absolutely nothing. We don't have shit but the clothes on our backs. I have my pen and my journal, but we're not going to despair.
We're good. It'll all be okay.
Yep, we'll be fine. It's no big deal, guys.
We'll have a miracle.
With optimism, I guess if that's what you want to call it, they set up camp. And of course, they struggle because to their surprise, this is not the Garden of Eden as they were told it would be. And they don't have a fucking clue how to survive here. And then because of Lane's behavior before, they weren't getting help from the natives. But over time, John was able to develop better relationship with the natives, and they mainly stayed upon in their agreed upon areas on the island. They're like, okay, you stay here, we'll stay over here, and everything will be fine. We can live, harmoniously. But occasionally they do reach out and they do help each other out with, supplies, communicating, that kind of thing. But there is a misunderstanding that leads to an attack that leaves many native people dead. So once again, the colonists are, as the natives, are once again reluctant to help them. And John is at this point doing everything that he can to repair these damaged relationships. He's apologizing, working with the chiefs and leaders of the native people to fix that damage done. But he can't help that he's a white Englishman who is still pushing Christianity onto the native people.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. But it seems like it's not like in a super forward way. Things are being done in a respectful way. Things are being done on how it's agreed upon. So he's not like, oh, you're gonna, you don't do this.
Right.
He's not doing any of that. It appears to be done in a very respectful, meaningful way. But 10 months after they first arrived to Roanoke Island, the colonists are begging John to return to England. They tell Raleigh and the Queen that the island is brutal, that they need help. They don't have the resources or food to survive. So they send a ship, but it arrived late, right? So they couldn't get the plants or the seeds that they had sent on the ship to grow because it's too late in the season. So it's just one fucking thing after the next, okay? At this point, the colony's on the brink of starvation and they need help desperately. They're begging to go back, and even though John doesn't want to return, he does agree, and he arrives back in England in 1588. Arriving back, John is ready to grab a ton of supplies and just head right back to Roanoke to his colony. But there's an issue with that plan.
Of course.
By this time, the Anglo-Spanish War has broken out, and he would not be able to return to Roanoke until 1593, 3 years later than he had planned.
Oh, shit. You're late, my guy.
Yeah. On the island, he left at least 115 people behind, including his daughter, son-in-law, and his newly born granddaughter. And this leads us to the mystery of Roanoke. Because when John finally returned to Roanoke Island, everyone, his entire colony of over 100 people, were gone. They vanished.
Like there wasn't any
They-
skeletons, nothing.
Nope.
Maybe they got off.
There's a ton of theories about what happened, but there's no evidence on which is true, which we'll get into 'em.
Right. Yeah, now I wanna hear.
So John White and his fleet first arrived at Croatoan Island on August 12th of 1590. And when they reach shore, they see smoke in the distance at Roanoke Island. So they sail there thinking that the colony was there, which is, I mean, where he had left them. But the weather was really bad, and the ocean was just kind of throwing them all over the place. And after 2 days of fighting against the Pamlico Sound, which is the largest lagoon in North America's east coast, and many people dying, they still have yet to make the 50-mile journey to Roanoke. And still seeing the smoke from the north end of Roanoke, they decide to just take rowboats and just row towards land. But again, they can't make it to shore. So they anchor the small boats and loudly sing songs. They play a trumpet, hoping that the colonists will hear them and know that they have returned and then come to shore. It is now August 18th, which was John's granddaughter's 3rd birthday. So he's like, I'm getting to shore. I
Right.
need to see my family. My colony needs me. They need supplies, all of that. So John and the other men just get out the boats and just kind of walk to the shoreline, which why didn't you do that to begin with? Like, whatever. So they find fresh tracks in the sand, but there's no one there to greet them. So they're like, okay, this is fucking weird. So they continue to walk along the shoreline and into the tree line. As they go into the tree line, they pass a tree with the letter CRO carved into it. They're like, that's fucking weird. But they keep going forward. Getting to the colony site fence line, which they had built to fortify their home. And on one of the posts at the front entrance, they again see the letters CRO. But this time, the word is complete. And it reads Croatoan. So this led them to believe that the colony had packed up and moved camp from Roanoke Island to Croatoan Island. And that, that was just their sign. Hey, this is where we're at. So now before John had left for England, right, he had spoken with the colony and they had all agreed that if something happened and they could no longer stay on Roanoke Island, that they would leave behind a Maltese cross, which I have a photo of one of these because I had no idea what a Maltese cross was. It just, I don't know. I think of Maltese, I think of the dog.
That's what I was gonna say.
So,
I was just thinking of the dog.
I don't know what that is. Once I seen it, I was like, oh, okay. I've seen this before. If it'll, okay, so while that loads. So a Maltese cross, it looks like 4 arrowheads pointing at each other that form a cross.
Oh, okay.
So even though this isn't the message that they agreed upon, like I said, John takes it that this is where the colony had went. Okay, so this is the tree that they first seen. Like, from everything that I've seen, these trees are no longer there anymore because they got blown down and struck by lightning and all of that, so they're not there anymore. But there are pictures of them. So there's that one with the CRO.
Oh, okay.
Which is just, I don't know, it's weird. Like, why? I feel like this one, whoever carved it started to carve it, but carved it too big.
Mm-hmm.
So then they're like, okay, well, next tree is what I feel like happened. But I don't actually know. So there's drawings of them too. Here it is. That's not a good picture of it. Let's try this one. Okay, that one's better.
Oh, okay.
Isn't that crazy?
Mm-hmm.
Be some creepy ass shit to come across, right?
I know.
No, thank you. So once they come to the realize, John's like, okay, this must be their message, right? He realizes that something's not right. Something's wrong because they had spent 2 days off the shores of Croatoan Island and they never saw any signs of people being there. So like I said, he found it strange because they had found there were no signs of people
Right.
while they were off the coast of Croatoan Island for 2 days. But they're like, let's just, whatever. So they give up looking on Roanoke Island. Everything is abandoned. There's not any clues left behind. But there were a few things that you would think the colony would have taken with them had they fled. There were weapons still there, some bits of pottery, the boats were all gone. But there were tons of other things that you would think that they would have taken with them
Mm-hmm.
that they didn't. So everything there doesn't point to any kind of distress, Right. It seems like the colony had purposely left their camp, but it's strange because the way that they built their homes was done so in a way that they could easily have been taken apart and moved to a new location. But they didn't do that. They collected a few belongings and just vanished. So from here, they plan to investigate the Croatoan Island the next morning. Because by this time, it's getting dark because they looked in the Roanoke 4, all that is dark. But they anchor the main boat. The anchor on the main boat had snapped. So they really only had one boat left. And with the sea being as rough as it was too risky for them to stay on Roanoke for the night because they could snap another cable, lose the boat, and then be shipwrecked on Roanoke Island.
Mm-hmm.
So the crew asked John if he just wanted to head south to the Caribbean for the winter, then come back in spring and pick up on their search. To which he says yes. So that's the plan. But the wind and sea is wild and it has another idea. The wind is so bad on the open sea that they are blown way off course and end up just having to sail back to England. Yeah. So from here, they return over and over again in search of this colony. Like this search spans over 100 years.
Holy shit.
Which is just honestly sad. This area was so unexplored that they could have went literally anywhere. They sent search parties. These search parties had no idea which way to go, which way to turn. And in those 3 years before John had returned, they could have went anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said before, there were a few official search expeditions that had taken place. The first was done in 1603. So 13 years after John first discovered the colony was gone. This search resulted in nothing. The colony of Roanoke weren't found. They were missing. Concluded, they had simply vanished without a trace. Poof, into thin air.
Just gone.
Yep. So at this point, several theories had come about what had actually happened to them, and those theories are still around today. One fact that is also up for debate is that John White had returned or headed to the Caribbean and then went to England. Some people actually think that he stayed for a whole year, or at least through the winter, looking for the colony before he went back.
Mm.
Either way, whether he stayed or returned to England, the colony was never found. So before I go on, I have a fun fact that I want to mention. I don't really know where it fits in the story, but I want to mention it because, I feel like I should. So John's daughter, Eleanor Dare, she was one of 17 women that came in that colony to North America to establish America. She gave birth to her daughter, Virginia Dare, because she was pregnant when she came here. Virginia Dare was the first child of English parents to be born in North America.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Nice.
First one on record.
Right.
His parents both were from England. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, that is.
Yep. So this little girl was really special, and I hope the colony found land somewhere, they established it, and just weren't located, so she was able to live past infancy, which that would be so cool to be able to say, my great, 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 whatever was the first person born
Right.
here. That'd be really, not the first person, but you know what I mean? That'd be so cool. Okay. Anyway. So there's this huge ancestry tracing project for the colony of Roanoke that's been going on for the past several years. It's pretty difficult, obviously, because by now the DNA would be very diluted.
Mm-hmm.
This happened in the 1500s. Our DNA by now, through centuries, it's going to be very diluted. And that relation is going to be very, very minute. So they're still working on it. They're trying to find out if the colony did, in fact, live. But it's one that's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
Very long process. So anyway. So a popular theory out there is that the colony had broken up into various tribes utilizing more land farther inland from Roanoke. Like they just kind of picked up, continued to move on, and they found different places to split into. Rather than being one large colony, they broke up into smaller bits. So there's a few accounts from both European colonists and native chiefs that suggest this could be true. One being Captain John Smith. So this man we all know from Pocahontas, which has its own fucking entire set of issues that we're not going to get into right now. So he claimed to have come across a clue when he was captured by the Powhatan and met with their chief, who was Pocahontas's father. According to John Smith, when he was captured and he met with the chief, they told him about a place called Okanahoan. I think that's how you say that, which was where men wore European style clothes and had houses with walls. They said there were more villages like this, and they even drew him a map to each of those locations. Later, John Smith and his men went to investigate each of those locations on the map, but they didn't come back with anything to show for their efforts. The colony was still not found. And shortly after all this, they stopped the efforts to find them. Now, there have been some rumors that have kind of went in different directions. So according to some, John Smith reported that instead of what I just told you, Pocahontas' father told him, yeah, they were here, but they aren't anymore. I killed them.
Oh,
And
shit.
yeah. And instead of believing him, they continued to search for them and only had to stop the efforts because they fell into a drought and began to starve, so turned to cannibalism in order to survive.
Wow.
Yep.
That could be true.
There's a lot of evidence that strongly suggests that the colonists in Jamestown, Virginia, had turned to cannibalism because of these reasons.
If you think about it, though, that could be true.
Mm-hmm. So over the years, many more people have gathered together the funding and the permission from the Queen and other British royalty to go and look for the lost colony. But each time they returned, they came back with nothing. No proof that they had even actually went to Roanoke looking for them either. Like, a lot of people use this mystery and these missing 100+ people to just kind of go out and pirate.
Yeah.
So, no, there's really no idea how many people actually went looking for them. It's reported several did, but who just used the opportunity to go out and steal shit. So now, sometime after William Strachey goes to Jamestown to gather information on Virginia and the many colonies and the native populations that were in that area. This is where he hears that there were colonists, which were not ever called the Lost Colony of Roanoke, but there were definitely some colonists that had gone missing, and everyone there was aware of it. He learned that this colony had lived happily and peacefully for 20 years with a tribe just beyond the Powhatan territory, and then the Powhatan people just killed them in cold blood.
The fuck?
You know, after 20 years of living.
Just kill him.
Yep. Now, this very well could be true. We don't have a clue. But this colony was a mixture of men, women, and by this time would have been many children. They're not a group of soldiers, and I don't see how they would have been a threat in any kind of way to the native people. I mean, they didn't have anything. So I can't imagine a situation where well over 100 people who are vulnerable, no supplies, they don't have any weapons because they left them behind on the island, would have been a threat.
Right.
And which would have been a threat out of nowhere after 20 years at that, for the native people to just slaughter them.
Right.
Doesn't make any sense to me. So it also makes more sense to me that the colony had split into different tribes. Because at the time they went missing, it's over 100 people. That's a lot of people for one tribe to take on.
Right.
But if they would have split into smaller sections, you know, like families, because that's what they were essentially, then it would have been easier for the tribes to take them on, teach them how to hunt and how to live and how to survive the way that they always had. So this guy, William, right, also says that the colony was killed in cold blood because a poet or a priest or, you know, something like that within the tribe had received a message saying that they needed to kill the colonists, saying that the religion that spoke to them was satanic and that they communicated with the devil.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Honestly, I think this guy's just fucking full of shit. And he's just trying to create a witch using what had happened. Because, I mean, come on. So it's very possible that the colony had become a part of these native tribes. I mean, that's probably what I would do.
Yeah.
To be honest. And then they went on to live long, full lives and just didn't want to be found by the time that the searches started. Like, fuck you.
You didn't come for me for 3 years. Why are you coming for me now?
Right, exactly. So there's evidence throughout history and from within the colonial area where people that spent time with native people or had even been kidnapped had went on to adopt the native ways and loved it and just chose to not return to modern life.
Right.
So it's very possible that that's what happened. Following all of these possible sightings of the lost colony, more would continue to surface. Right. So there are several reports of people describing pale skinned people with blonde hair living among the tribes. There was a boy with blonde hair and gray eyes that one explorer wrote about in his journals. But researchers today don't believe this was a real person from the lost colony. Instead, they think it was a sighting of someone with albinism, because at this time it is now known today that those with albinism were often born to Native American tribes.
Mm.
So research or historians and researchers now think that that's all that it was. So there are two other accounts of tribes having two. Bleh. There are other accounts of tribes having two-story cottages with thatched roofs, and some people within the tribes would know English. They would be able to read and write, and some had English surnames. You know what a surname is, right?
Mm-mm.
It's your last name.
Oh, okay. Yep.
A lot of people don't realize that that's what it is. But yeah, back in the day, that's what it was called. Oh, what's your surname? Just your fucking last name. So by this time, colonization had been going on for years. So it's just possible that the natives just learned it from
Right.
colonizers as they came in. Doesn't really point to the lost colony in any way.
Mm-hmm.
So now there was another clue that backs up the claim that the colony had just split and integrated with the native people. And it is another carving in a tree.
Oh, shit.
So you remember the carving CRO,
Mm-hmm.
then the carving Croatoan on Roanoke Island. Okay, well, on Croatoan Island, there was a tree that had CORA carved into it. Then on the mainland, there was a very small tribe called the Corey, also known as the Cornan. So many people think that this could be a clue pointing to the colony moving from Roanoke to Croatoan and then to the mainland to live with the Corey people. Unfortunately, lightning struck that tree and there was a lot of decay left behind, so the inscription can't really be measured to figure out how old the carving actually is because it's just too damaged. So it could be real, it could be from the colony, or it could just be somebody being fucking stupid.
Mm-hmm.
So now the Lumbee tribe, depending on who you ask and what you read, had apparently made claims to have descendants that were both Native American and Roanoke colonists. But it's one of those, like some people say, yeah, some history says yeah, some other history things say no.
Right.
Just don't really know. So for centuries, everyone has talked about Roanoke and this mystery event where the only real clue left behind was the word Croatoan carved into a tree. But there have been a few other possible clues. It's almost like a treasure hunt for the lost colony, really.
That's what it seems like.
Yeah. So from 1937 to 1931, 43 stones were found from North Carolina to Atlanta that were thought to be clues of what happened to the colony. The first stone was discovered by a California man who was driving through North Carolina. He was exploring along the roadside when he came across a 21-pound stone that was engraved with strange markings and a linguistically older version of English, which we now know today to be Elizabethan English. So it spoke of war and hardship over 2 years, and the person that engraved it seemed to be speaking to their father, wrote that half of them were dead, including the father's son-in-law and granddaughter. The inscription was signed with the initials ED, which is believed to be those of John White's daughter, Eleanor Dare.
Mm.
Now, the man that found this had no fucking idea what he found. He just thought it was a really cool rock. And maybe that, could have possibly had some significance. I mean, he's from California. How would he know about any of this? So he took it to a college and sold it to a professor who knew what it was. This professor made the mistake of publicizing this stone, even offering a reward for more stones that may show up or that had been found in the same way or one similar. Soon after this, 42 other stones were found and made their way into the possession of this man. This happened over a 3 or 4 year span. These stones as a whole were referred to as the Dare Stones. But it would turn out that those 42 other stones sold to this guy
We're fake.
were traced to a single stone cutter. So 42 of the 43 Dare Stones are fake.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
So the original stone is still believed to be real. So they're still researching it, trying to confirm it, but it is believed because as of right now, based on the layers of weathered rock compared to the deeper layers of rock within it, and the etching, like within the etchings,
Mm-hmm.
it's believed that it was etched a few hundred years ago, which lines up with the time frame.
Right.
So it's a promising lead, but it hasn't been 100% confirmed. And not only that, it's a fucking rock. You know what I mean?
Right.
So now in 2012, a real break in the case seemed to happen. In a real life Indiana Jones way, researchers at the First Colony Foundation were looking over a map at the British Museum in London. This map was one that had been painted by John White. And it had been titled La Virginia Pars. And when under the right lighting, so like a backlight, behind the map, a bit of invisible ink became noticeable. Now, this map had been in the possession of researchers for many years at this point, obviously. So, having it for this long, all of a sudden, they discovered 2 patches. One had been to cover the original map because it looked like, like he had made a mistake. So, we just kind of patched it and then fixed it because they didn't have fucking
Right.
pencils.
Right.
So it was clear that John White had made a mistake somewhere, covered it, repainted the map, and then corrected the mistake. Okay, so they had the one patch,
Mm-hmm.
right, that was used to make a correction on the map. But underneath that patch, they found a second patch.
Mm.
And it appeared that under the second patch, like there was a hidden message, like I mentioned. So, like I said, this message was written in a type of like invisible ink that was only visible under a backlight. Now, it's thought that this message is a coded one to guard information from the Spanish should they have ever stolen the map.
Mm-hmm.
The secret message showed an outline of a fort 50 miles west of Roanoke, which, according to John White's writings, was about the distance the colony said they would travel if they had to move.
Mm.
But this map still lacked details. Details needed to locate the exact location because the drawing of the fort was not to scale. It was just kind of on there. So the spot on the map is on top of thousands of acres of land in North Carolina.
Yeah.
So I have a picture of that spot on the map. What's that spot right there?
Okay. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. So when they go searching for this spot, the search is huge because it's a very large area.
Right.
So people over the years have explored this area and they have seemed to zero in on an area that they think this site is. And a team of archaeologists set out to investigate the site, which turned out to be in Bertie County, North Carolina. They found no evidence of any kind of fort. But when they excavated the site, they did find fragments of weapons and pottery that would have belonged to a small group of colonists.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a very exciting discovery, obviously. With this, they brought in ground penetrating radars and found another site 2 miles away that held similar items, which suggested that this was a temporary site for whoever it was that was there. With this discovery came a new theory. And this one suggested that John White and the colony had lied. So, Raleigh, who was John White's boss, was tasked by the Queen to establish a colony in North America. Then bring back gold, which he would give her some of it, and then the rest was theirs. But he never found gold.
Right.
On the first voyage with Ralph Lane, John and the other explorers and soldiers found something that was perhaps much more valuable than gold.
Mm.
they found sassafras. So sassafras, which I know sounds like it's totally made up, it's not. It is a tree which the native tribes used for food, to make tea. They used it to treat a variety of health issues, injuries, and skin diseases. Today, the wood from a sassafras tree is used to make furniture. The flowers are used as a fertilizer for growing beans and to fragrant scented soaps.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm. So Raleigh had made this discovery and introduced it to England with these people beginning to use it as a miracle cure for many ailments. So it's possible that once he found this tree, he schemed to create a sassafras trade under the guise of setting up a colony in order to gather funding to get back to North America and then keep all the profits. So basically creating a black market for sassafras.
Right. That's wild.
So this theory says that it was Raleigh's plan to send John White and the colony to the area to cultivate the sassafras, which is why John marked the map with invisible ink to keep it hidden. And then when John left for Europe, the group marked the tree with the word Croatoan to tell John where they had set up the drop point for the trade. Now, do you remember how I told you there were a ton of people that went to the Queen wanting funding to search for the colony? But then when they returned, they were just tight lipped about whatever it was that they had found and whatever the fuck was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the theory goes on to say that rather than using the funding to pirate and steal shit, that they were actually using the Lost Colony, quote, as a way to get funding to sail to Croatoan Island and get the pickup spot to the pickup spot to grab all the sassafras from the people that were on the island and then go sell it.
That's a pretty good theory.
Mm-hmm. Personally, I don't think it really carries a whole lot of water,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a good theory, but
Right.
I don't think it holds much water. So if this went down the way they said, there were several women who had children when they got there. Then of course they would have went on to have more children.
Right.
You would think that at some point one of these kids would have spilled the beans once they grew up about what the fuck was going on. Like at some point there were families that tell this story down the line.
Down the line, yeah.
This whole thing is extremely mysterious. And honestly, I don't think we'll ever have answers
Yeah.
and know what the hell happened here. There's a ton of theories, and there's a lot more than what I just told you about. These are just the most popular ones.
Right.
But there's a ton of theories about what happened to this colony. Oh. So this is where we lean into a possible paranormal link in the mystery. So the Lost Colony of Roanoke has baffled people for centuries, which has created a distraction from something else that's lurking in this exact area. That is something inhumane and dangerous. Something that could be a curse or a beast. North Carolina natives have spoken of being stalked by a magical being that can manifest as different creatures, most often appearing as a reptile. This is going to open a whole fucking can of worms, okay?
Oh, God.
I'm just going to tell you that now. We might regret opening it, but we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, why not? Hell.
Okay. Guys, I'm talking about lizard people.
Lizard people?
Yep. There are many accounts of a gecko-like shaped thing in this area. It's like a forest spirit or an entity that often appears as a small reptile. It attaches itself to people, so basically possessing them, and then forcing them to act out atrocities, causing them to attack one another. So aside from this lizard spirit thing, I can't even say that with a straight face.
I know.
I mean, who knows? Maybe it's true. I don't know. I'm from North Carolina, and I've never seen a person possessed by a gecko, but maybe it's in specific areas. I don't know. Like
Maybe it's just where you haven't been.
maybe. There's also a similar dark spirit that absorbs people into the forest, which then changes them into animals and trees. I wish everybody could see that look you're giving me right now.
I think I like the other theories better. They're more realistic.
And around the same time that the colony went missing, the native tribes to this area had reported strange phenomena. like wildlife began dying at a dramatic rate, and there was really no known reason to why. They just started dying off. This could have happened because of extreme drought,
Right.
but the native people in this area believed that these dark spirits were active here and that the colony possibly succumbed to these entities. It's a common belief among the native people in the area. Now, historians today say the tribes believe deeply in the threat of these spirits, that they themselves would condemn accused sorcerers to death because they did not mess around with this dark magic type of shit. They're like, nope, you're dead. Bye-bye. I don't fuck with this shit. So historians believe that this may have been what happened. They think the tribes may have accused the colonists of witchcraft, and so they killed them to keep these dark spirits away, which is possible.
That's a good theory.
I mean, you know, these colonists are coming over with all these diseases and all these, you know, weapons and all this stuff that the tribes aren't used to. It's very possible that they thought they were witches.
Right.
So with the diseases, there's a lot of tribe members that are just dying. And the only connection between these deaths and the tribes are the colonists. So it's possible that the tribes thought, you know, they're somehow connected to the devil and these dark spirits. Other people believe that doesn't have anything to do with the evil spirits or entities that lived in the woods of the island, but instead had something to do with a curse. So the word Croatoan has appeared a few times throughout history, always preceding a mysterious death or disappearance. On October 3rd of 1849, Edgar Allan Poe was discovered in a delirious state, dressed in worn clothing and lying in a gutter outside of a public house. He was semi-conscious and unable to move. For several days after he was found, Poe went in and out of consciousness and hallucination, only to die a few days later. Now, we could probably do an entire episode on Edgar Allan Poe, his life and literally everything that happened to him, because this man was a walking mystery.
Yeah.
And his death was no different. So now suddenly on his deathbed, he said with his last breath, Croatoan. Nobody knows why he said it.
Yeah.
Then, a few decades later, the infamous stagecoach robber Charles E. Bolus, who went by Black Bart, was released from prison. Which Black Bart was the most politest robber that I think has ever existed. Yeah. He had a gun. He did all the normal, you know, robber shit. He wore a potato sack on his head with cutout slits. He never swore and was always polite.
Excuse me, I'm going to rob you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate your cooperation.
Yes, thank you.
Yep. I'm going to leave now. It was said that he was afraid of horses, so he would only rob on foot. He carried a gun, but never shot it. He just kind of had it for, give me your money.
To kind of scare you.
Yeah, exactly. He would write poems and then leave them at the crime scenes. So he was a polite, romantic stagecoach robber.
Right.
He had a wife, so he did not rob families. I mean, technically, he did take the money from the people, but he never actually stole from them.
Mm-hmm.
So the stagecoaches he would rob were Wells Fargo stagecoaches. So he stole from the banks.
Right.
Now, he eventually was caught and was sent to prison. He did his time, and then when he got out, because he was just a polite guy, and he just behaved himself, he only served 4 out of his 6 years. Which, honestly, it's a whole nother subject. He robbed 28 stagecoaches with a weapon, and even though he never hurt anyone, which is a plus, right? He was only sentenced to 6 years.
It was because he was so polite.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Thank you.
He wasn't a thug.
Oh, God. Okay. But yeah, 1800 lifespans were way shorter than they are now.
Right.
And robbing banks and stagecoaches were really just the easiest way to get money, but I don't know. I find it crazy. 6 years. You robbed 28 stagecoaches at gunpoint. And he only got 6 years. Oh, God. Anyway, so this guy was released from prison in January of 1888 and left behind in his cell. They found the word Croatoan carved into the walls of the cell. Then, a month after his release, Black Bart vanished. He was never seen or heard from again.
That's wild.
Mm-hmm. He wrote a letter to his wife, but it didn't say where he was going. It was just kind of like, I'm embarrassed about what happened, and I'm done with crime. Then at some point, someone came forward saying that they saw him at an inn, and that was the last sighting of him.
That's wild.
Mm-hmm. Now, a decade later, a ship named Carol A. Deering floated ashore in Cape Hatteras, which is right there in North Carolina and 50 miles from the Croatoan Island.
Mm.
The crew that was on board had vanished, and the food had been left half prepared for the next day. It was clear that they did not plan on just, jumping ship. They just vanished. And just like the colony, no one could find them, and they were never found. Ever. Then, when the captain's logbook was examined, the last word written in it was Croatoan.
That's spooky.
Lastly, we have Amelia Earhart. She had apparently written the word Croatoan in her journal before she closed it for the last time. She then jumped in her plane, set out to fly around the world to only disappear in 1937.
Mm.
Yep. So basically, this curse is said to be whenever you see the word Croatoan, it somehow coincides with an unsolved death or disappearance. That Croatoan is the great predictor of mysterious happenings. And some people believe that it's an evil spirit from the woods that is calling the people back to it, calling them into the woods and luring them to their death.
That's creepy.
Now, to this day, we have no idea what happened to the Lost Colony of Roanoke. And I couldn't find anyone else that had died or disappeared with a connection to the word Croatoan since the ones that I just told you about. But that doesn't mean that the island is quiet or peaceful. If you visit Roanoke Island today, you may just encounter ghosts because the island is said to be haunted.
Mm.
So I'm going to take you on a haunted trip around Roanoke. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So our first stop is the Roanoke Island Inn. This is owned by the great-grandson of the family who originally built it in the 1860s. The inn was opened as a little bed and breakfast that overlooked Roanoke Marsh's lighthouse. One of the family members that eventually inherited it was Roscoe Jones. So for many years, he not only owned and operated the inn, but he was also the postmaster for the town of Manteo. Unfortunately, one day Roscoe had received a letter from the U.S. Postal Service informing him that he had been let go. This was a complete surprise to him, and this job was a big part of who he was. So this not only took away who he was, but also it humiliated him. So he locked himself into the Roanoke Inn and then died shortly after. It is said that he is still locked inside that inn today. Guests have recounted hearing footsteps around the room that he died in and throughout the halls. Vases fall to the floor and shatter. The window blinds move up and down on their own. The radios throughout the rooms will turn on and off on their own. The spirit of Roscoe is seen on a regular basis. He seems to make himself known regularly, being seen in his postal uniform coming and going from the building. So now close to this inn, we have our next stop. This is the Pioneer Theater, which is also operated by the descendants of the original owners. So clearly there's a lot of families that have stayed in this area and just kind of passed on their businesses over the years. Now the ghost in this theater is all about respect. So if you're here, you're on your cell phone while watching a movie, there's a chance that you're probably going to get your phone smacked out of your hand.
Oh, shit.
Mm-hmm. It's thought that this ghost is one of the original owners who was like, come on. Be respectful, dude, for real. And then just kind of slaps it out of your hand because you're disrespecting the other people in the theater.
You're being rude.
Yeah. That one's great. I love that one.
But I mean, it is true.
Yeah, I think that one is probably my favorite ghost. That one's, I would have that ghost all day long.
I hate going to the movie theaters and people be on their phone when the
I
movie
know.
started and stuff. I think
Yeah,
it's so
like,
rude.
before the movie starts, that's one thing. But while the movie is playing, unless it's, like, an absolute emergency, I
Right.
mean, you don't need to be on your
Well, then you can get up and walk out.
exactly. Like, it's rude. Ugh. Anyway, so our final stop has the ghost of a white doe.
Like a deer?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. So local lore says that Virginia Dare, the granddaughter of John White and the first English child born in America, and born right before John White left, and who supposedly was turning 3 the day he returned, had actually lived and grew up amongst one of the native tribes. It goes on to say that a witch doctor had his eye on her and asked her to marry him. But when she refused, he cast a spell on her that turned her into a ghostly white doe.
Mm.
So since then, locals and tourists report seeing a white doe on the island. Now, these ghosts aren't scary. Like, to be
Right.
honest, I will live with these ghosts
Yeah.
any day of the week.
Most definitely.
So most people think, "Oh my god, no way," when they hear the island of Roanoke. But it's not full of scary ghosts. They just kind of coexist,
Mhm.
you know? But the possible ghosts and the ghosts aren't the only thing going on Roanoke Island. Something more sinister and more dangerous. This is a creature that lurks under the cloak of night. Under this cloak, it looks for a victim, someone who it can make disappear forever. I'm talking about the Roanoke werewolf.
Oh, so we went from a gecko to a werewolf.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. I will link the video
Yeah.
in the description, and then I'll send it to you when we're
Okay.
done so you can watch it.
Okay.
But there's a channel on YouTube and it's titled Wild Dreams Films. They conducted an interview with David and Lisa Letty. This is a couple who got the fright of their lives one night on Roanoke Island. So this couple, they're avid campers. They spend a lot of time outside. You know, they know what to expect. One year, they planned their camping trip to the Outer Banks of North Carolina because neither had ever been there. They decided that since it was warm and perfect camping weather, that they would drive a little farther south and camp there compared to where they normally would have. So after packing up their camping gear, they get in the car, they start driving south on the interstate, towing their camper on the back of the truck. They're enjoying the scenes, the small town, and just all the things that to take in as you travel through these little towns on their way to the Outer Banks. Which honestly, you can't do anything but take in that scenery.
Mhm.
North Carolina is a beautiful state. It's really picturesque. All the mountains and just everything. It's perfect to travel through.
Right.
There's always something to see as you go through the state. So now night falls, and they're about 50 miles from Roanoke Island. They're entering Pettigrew State Park. That blissful feeling of driving through the North Carolina mountains and forests quickly fades. As Lisa said, the entire place took on a quote, creepy, creepy feeling. As David drove, Lisa looked out her window at a group of people standing in the darkness, just staring at them as they drove by. No fucking thank you.
I'm good.
So now, they're both kind of starting to feel that anxiousness.
Right.
As it gets darker and darker, and later, it only gets weirder and weirder. So David and Lisa just get this feeling that something just is not right with this community, the houses, like nothing's right. But eventually they reach the campsite. It's inside the state park. And to their surprise, the campsite is just a swamp. There's no tree coverage, just totally void of trees, just a swamp. So basically, they're just sitting ducks out here for
Mhm.
whatever the fuck may happen, right? Bears, mountain lions, all that shit that's in North Carolina. They're just sitting ducks. They're completely out in the open, nothing to cover themselves from predators or those creepy people they've seen on the side of the road.
Right.
So they decide to park the truck. They get out. They're just kind of like standing next to the camper, trying to figure out what the fuck they need to do now when a park ranger pulls up. And he kind of seemed a bit concerned. He's like, "What are you doing here?" They're like, "Oh, we planned on camping." And he's like, "Oh, okay." They exchange a few more words, and he then tells them that he's headed home for the night and he won't be on duty, but he'd be back in the morning. which we'll have to do an episode on the Appalachia area on its own
Mhm.
because the entire area is just full of people going missing, like cryptids, just crazy shit. So we'll have to do an episode just that by itself. So people that live in these woods that do harm to other people, there's rumors of secrets, um, park rangers knowing shit,
Yeah.
keeping it quiet. Like it's a whole thing, guys. Okay. So we'll do an episode on that. Okay. Anyway. So in this area, there's a very thin line that crosses between panic and fear within the public and then trying to handle things internally to keep it secret. It's beautiful, but there's a lot of crazy shit that happens in the Appalachia area. All right. Anyway, so back to Dave and Lisa. So they once they heard that there was going to be no ranger on duty, they were like, "No, we're not staying here." So they get back in their car and they decide to find somewhere that is not so dark or isolated and that's safe. So they decide to head to a bigger town where they can just park in a shopping center and just sleep there for the night. So they look up the closest place that fits that, and that's 50 miles away. It was a 2-hour drive from where they were at the moment because it was all back roads. And this place is none other than on Roanoke Island.
Of course.
In the middle of Roanoke Island, there are a few shopping centers, so they decide to head there. While weaving through all these back roads in an extremely desolate and unpopulated area, the truck bounces from hitting something. Neither David or Lisa want to get out and check it out. I can't fucking blame them.
I
It's
wouldn't.
dark in the middle of the woods. My car still drives. I don't want to get out and look. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good.
This entire area, they said, just felt creepy and dangerous. They both felt like something was not right. David decides to get out and take a look anyway, but he's going to go a little bit prepared. So he grabs his handgun out of the glove box and then leaves the truck. With his gun and a flashlight, he slowly makes his way down the driver's side toward the back of the truck to the camper, checking underneath as he goes. He looks at the tires, the hitch, all of it. No sign of wildlife. Everything looks fine. So then he gets to the back of the camper and he notices that one of the brake lights had been shattered. Then the entire swamp goes completely silent. There's no sounds from frogs, no crickets, no humming or buzzing of insects. It's completely and deafeningly silent. He doesn't see anything. He points his flashlight into the bush, into the swamp, and the overgrowth around it, but he sees nothing. He knows something isn't right, and he's on high alert. He's scared, and he's looking everywhere trying to find what it is that his body is sensing, telling him is there. Then he hears a noise. It's not the animals. It's not the insects. It's something else. Something moving slowly from the swamp. Through the twigs, the grass swishing from the push of its body, David turns and points the flashlight in the direction of that noise. And 20 yards away from him, where he himself stood, was a wolf-like creature. A beast that stood 4 foot tall with yellow glowing eyes. And it was hunting him.
Oh, hell no.
At this point, David believes it's a wolf because wolves are native to the North Carolina area.
Right.
So it's not out of the realm of possibility that he is standing that close to a wolf. But as he looks at this creature, he says it, quote, did something so alien and so strange that it still haunts me to this day. As David is looking at this creature, into its eyes, it pushed itself forward onto a rock and stood on 2 feet. It's now standing at about 7 feet tall and staring directly at David.
No, I'm good. Nope. Mm-mm. Hell no.
There are tufts of hair that cover its forward-facing ears. Its midsection is very muscular, and it has a mane of fur on its shoulders. Instead of paws, the creature has clawed hands. This giant fucking thing then takes a step towards David and growls.
I wouldn't even stood there that damn long.
I think he's just like in shock. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, hell yeah. Shit.
Then David spots another set of yellow eyes
There's 2.
right next to this creature that just stood up like a man and growled is an identical bipedal creature. After about 2 seconds, he begins to process that there's 2 of these standing only 2 feet apart and about 20 yards from where he is. He takes his eyes off the second creature, looks back at the second one, realizing that in those 2 seconds, while he is looking at the second one, the first wolf had cut the distance between them in half. So now it's standing 10 yards away. And now he sees out the corner of his eye the second creature is doing the same. David shot his gun, striking the first creature in the shoulder, to which it barely fucking reacted. In fact, it looked as if it had become angry that he shot it.
You just pissed it off.
So he turns and runs back to his truck with only a few feet, which was only a few feet away from him. So now his wife had actually gotten out of the car and she's standing on the passenger side, trying to figure out what the fuck is going on and why he just shot his gun. He starts screaming for her to get back in the car. So she does. They get in and they take off. He's terrified and trembling. Lisa's terrified because she said that she had never seen him so scared. Other than him being scared, she didn't have a fucking clue what was happening. They drive away and she's like, oh, what happened, And he tells her, oh, that he saw something out there in the woods that kind of looked like a wolf. But that's it. So from here, they drive in silence until they reach the populated area of Roanoke Island. Now, David didn't tell Elisa everything, like I just said. And he said he did that because he didn't want to scare her and ruin the rest of their trip. So they get to the parking lot. Everything starts to calm down. They go into the grocery store, grab a few things. They get out to the parking lot, and there's someone else out there, which felt odd to them because although it was a populated area, the parking lot had been completely empty when they first arrived. And now, as they come back out of the store, there was a guy just sitting in his car staring at them angrily. So David is like, what the fuck? So he takes a step away from Lisa towards the car, like, hey, buddy, what do you want? And this guy's like, oh, sorry, you look like a friend of mine. And this only gets weirder from here. Okay. So as he's talking to this guy, David can see through the window that he has a couple of rifles in his car. So David asks him if he hunts. And the guy's like, well, yeah. So David asks if he'd ever hunted in the swamp. And the guy starts to kind of like get shifty at this point. Doesn't really want to say anything to David. But then he follows up with, have you ever seen anything weird up there? The guy's jaw drops. He said, I thought I was the only one. And then he tells David that 2 years before this, when he was hunting in the swamp, he saw a wolf that walked on its back 2 legs.
That's wild.
So now once this crazy ass camping trip is finally over and they get home, David finally tells Lisa what he saw and exactly what happened. Once he does, she says that all makes sense to her because she fully believes in believing in your gut and listening to it. And she said the entire time that they were out there, something in her was screaming to get out of there. So now she wonders if the people of Roanoke, if the Lost Colony, had encountered this creature and that they just hadn't been able to.
It definitely could be.
So a lot of shit has went down and it's still going down on the island of Roanoke. What is going on, the cause of all this, the fate of the Lost Colony is all still the biggest mystery of North Carolina. Could the colony have simulated with nearby tribes? Did they die of disease and starvation? Were they killed by foreign explorers, neighboring tribes, or inter-colony conflict? Were they victims of a curse absorbed by forest spirits or even eaten by werewolves? This is something that we may never know. And so, that is the mystery of the Lost Colony of Roanoke, and it remains just that, a mystery. One that is forever lost to history. That is the Lost Colony of Roanoke.
That's wild. It makes me want to go visit it.
No, thank you.
Just to see.
I don't want to be possessed by a lizard.
Well, hell no.
I don't want to be absorbed by evil forest spirits, and I do not want to be hunted by a 7-foot tall.
The 7-foot tall werewolf is what I want to see. Now, how I would react when I seen it would be a different story. But sitting here on your couch, I'm intrigued. But to go out and do it, I don't know how I would feel.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Mm-hmm. The crazy ass story, isn't it?
It is. And the way it's developed after all these years, that's the crazy part about it.
It's just like every century, it's just like more shit comes out. It's crazy.
Right. It's wild. Yeah, that one definitely had everything in it.
was a good one.
Yeah.
Of everything.
Yeah, it definitely did.
Yep. And see, with Amelia Earhart, everybody says that she went missing over the Bermuda Triangle,
Right,
right? And I mean, from what I know, that is the last known location of her plane.
right.
But the last thing written in her journal before she took off and then disappeared was Croatoan. How did she have a connection to the island?
That is true.
And then there's the ship where everyone fucking disappeared.
And they had meal, like, stuff prepped for the next meal.
Yeah.
So there's people that live on that island?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Croatoan and Roanoke Island. Yeah. There's people that live there.
Hmm. I don't know if I'd be living on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be living there.
Then there's someone cover the Carol steering ship.
Mhm.
The backstory is wild.
Is it?
Yeah, because they just fucking vanished. There's a whole ship of people just vanished in the middle of the fucking ocean. So Amelia Earhart went through the Bermuda Triangle.
Right.
The steering ship was set to go through the Bermuda Triangle.
Might be the Bermuda Triangle's fault.
Yep. Okay, that's all I got.
I got nothing.
What will have next week? I think we go back to the true crime element of
Everything?
everything next week, I believe.
Okay.
I just can't remember which restaurant.
Is it the one that you haven't finished yet?
Yes, so it's not what's sort of true crime, but not really.
Right.
Next week, it's more of a haunting.
Oh, that'll be a good one.
Yeah, that's what next week is. Then after that, we go back into true crime cases.
Okay.
Yep, yep. I'm excited for next week's too. It'll be a good one.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
It's supposed to be super fucking.
Oh, that'll be good. We haven't done one like that for a while.
No, it's supposed to be like I don't think we've done one at all that's this level of haunting.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. I can't wait.
Like some history on it, obviously, because you gotta have that. But it's so fucked up, like from beginning to end. Fucked up.
Nice.
Yep. Yep. Okay. That's it, guys. There's your teaser for next week's episode. Be sure to come back and listen to that. Let me see. Our Facebook link is in the description, as always. I got some pictures. I don't have a whole lot, just because of how old
Yeah.
today's topic was, but I do have a few. Those will be on the Facebook page. So make sure you give us a like, follow, listen, all that good stuff on there. You can check us out on our TikTok as well. That link is on our Facebook page somewhere. And that's all we got for this week. So you don't have nothing else, Manny.
I ain't got nothing else.
All right. Well, guys, we hope you keep listening and remember to
Watch for monsters.
and don't kill people. Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all.